These days, when Amaka steps out from her room, the entire compound becomes strangely quiet. The same woman that used to call her my sister now look away immediately. The children no longer greet her. Even the old mama that normally asks everyone to come and eat outside stopped talking to her completely. But the worst part wasn't the neighbors. It was her husband, Tunde. Tunde no longer looked at her with love. The man who once called her my queen now spoke to her like a stranger, renting the same apartment. Some nights, he wouldn't even come home early anymore. And when he did, silence followed him immediately. Cold silence, painful silence. The kind of silence that can destroy somebody slowly. Amaka tried everything to understand what was happening. At first, she thought maybe her husband was stressed from work. Then, she thought maybe he was angry because they still didn't have a child after 7 years of marriage. But as they turned into weeks, the hatred became obvious. Even if Tunde, her husband, is angry with her because she hasn't given him a child, what about the neighbors? Why are they angry? She's confused. One evening, Amaka stood in front of him and finally asked, Tunde, what exactly did I do to you? The man looked at her with eyes she no longer recognized. Then he replied quietly, you know what you did. That answer nearly drove her mad. Because truly, she didn't understand why everybody suddenly ate her. Even her mother-in-law changed completely. The same woman that used to pray for her to conceive now insulted her openly. You are not a woman of peace. Her mother-in-law said to her one afternoon. Even people on the street whispered whenever she passed. Amaka became scared, confused, broken. Several times she begged her husband to explain himself. But every single time, he kept saying the same thing. You know what you did. Eventually, Amaka became desperate. She involved their church pastor because, according to her, if I truly did something wrong, let somebody tell me. Pastor scheduled a meeting in their apartment that Sunday evening. And that was the first day Amaka realized her marriage might never recover again. The pastor sat quietly. Amaka was already crying before the conversation even started. Pastor, she said painfully, I don't understand why my husband hates me now. He refuses to talk to me properly. The compound people avoid me. Even his family now treats me like an evil person. Everybody keeps saying, I know what I did, but honestly, I don't know. The pastor turned towards Tunde gently. My son, what happened? Tell me. At first, Tunde remained silent. Then slowly, he laughed bitterly. Not the laughter of happiness, the laughter of somebody deeply disappointed. Then he finally spoke. You want to know what happened, Pastor? He pointed at Amaka. This woman sitting here is not who people think she is. Amaka's heart started beating fast. The pastor became very serious. Tunde leaned back slowly and said, Pastor, do you know how peaceful this compound used to be before everything changed? And just like that, the room became quiet because suddenly everyone's mind returned to how things used to be. Back then, when the compound was full of love, back when everybody lived like family, back when Amaka herself was the happiest woman there in that compound 7 years earlier, the compound was different. Every evening, women sat outside gisting while children play football barefoot. Nobody ate alone. If somebody cooked soup, everybody tasted it. The men behaved like brothers, and among all the couples living there, Tunde and Amaka were everybody's favorites. Tunde loved that woman openly, even though they have been trying to conceive for 7 painful years. He never stopped defending her. Whenever people mock her secretly for not having a child, Tunde always stood by her side. He bought her gifts, prayed with her, loved her, told her not to lose hope. Sometimes at night, Amaka would cry quietly because another pregnancy test failed again. And today we hold her hand tightly and whispered, one day, our turn will come. Back then, Amaka truly loved her husband deeply until tragedy entered the compound. One afternoon, terrible news shocked everybody. The neighbor, Chioma, lost her husband suddenly. The man left healthy in the morning and returned home as a corpse. The entire compound mourned like one family. Chioma became a widow overnight, young, broken, and alone with one child, her son, Chinedu. That boy became the only reason she kept breathing. After the burial, everybody started helping her survive. The women cooked for her. The men contributed money. People bought groceries regularly so she and her son wouldn't suffer. And Tunde became one of the people helping the most. Tunde and Chioma's husband used to be best of friends when he was still alive. And Tunde took up the responsibility to take care of his friend's widow and son. Tunde became one of the people helping the most. At first, Amaka understood. She pitied Chioma too, but slowly something changed inside her. Because Chioma started coming to the apartment often, sometimes for salt, sometimes for Maggi, sometimes for rice. And every time, Tunde responded immediately, please help her. She has nobody. At first, it looked normal, but to Amaka, it slowly started feeling like too much. Especially because every single day, she returned to an empty womb. While Chioma still had a child, jealousy entered quietly, like smoke, slowly, dangerously, and nobody noticed it until that rainy night. The night that destroyed everything. Rain was falling heavily. That evening, Tunde was inside the bedroom. Amaka sat alone in the sitting room. Then, suddenly, knock, knock, knock on the door. Amaka looked towards the door. It was Chioma, standing outside in the rain, holding little Chinedu tightly. The woman looked desperate. She kept knocking, again and again and again. Amaka saw her clearly, but bitterness filled her chest immediately. Inside her mind, she was thinking, why is it always my husband she runs to? She should go somewhere else. For once, she sat there, silently, pretending nobody was outside. After a few minutes, the knocking stopped. Chioma left. A few seconds later, Tunde walked into the sitting room and asked, did somebody knock? Amaka replied calmly, no. That single lie changed everything forever. 2 days later, the compound woke up to devastating news. Little Chinedu was dead. The child has been convulsing that rainy night. Chioma has been running around desperately looking for help to rush him to the hospital. Tunde was the only man that has a car in the compound. That is why Chioma came for his help to help her take her son to the hospital. The doctor said if helpers came earlier, maybe the boy would still be alive. The compound entered mourning again, and that was when Tunde's voice suddenly brought everybody back to the present. Inside the pastor's meeting, he looked directly at Amaka and said, you told me nobody knocked. Amaka bursted into tears immediately. But Tunde continued, I believed you until I checked the CCTV camera. The pastor's face changed instantly. Amaka froze completely. Tunde's voice broke with pain. I saw her standing there in the rain. I saw you peeping through the curtain, and I saw you ignore her. The room became dead silent. Then he said quietly, "That little boy might still be alive today if you have opened that door. My friend Legacy will still be alive." Amaka collapsed into tears. The pastor could not even speak. "You are praying to God for a child, yet you despise a widow with a child. You allow jealousy to ruin what God has in stock for you." And outside, the compound people already knew why nothing will ever remain the same again. Dear viewers, we need your opinion. What can you say about Amaka? Was her jealousy justified? Was she jealous that Chioma will take her husband? Was the attitude of the compound people and her husband justified? Leave your comment at the comment section and please follow us for more interesting stories like this.